You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
This is Locked On Hornets, your daily podcast on the Charlotte Hornets and the NBA. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Search your podcast app for Locked On to get podcasts on the NBA, the NFL, and fantasy sports. We are coming to you live from the Gittimer.com studios in BEA, beautiful uptown Charlotte on this Wednesday, a snowy, rainy mix Wednesday here in Charlotte. I'm Doug Branson, joined by my panel. We've got first from the mean streets of Cotswold, the man, the myth, the legend, David Walker.
We're going on day 4 of kids home from school. Spirits are low. Morale is waning.
Dearest Martha.
Dearest Martha. Send reinforcements.
Yeah, snow. So that's the whole deal, right? That like snow days are fun for children, less fun for adults. That's like
we're gonna have fun with it. It's just coming off a 3-day weekend. It's something we were not mentally prepared for, but we'll get there.
Oh, I get it. You have to mentally prepare for something like that.
Mentally, emotionally, yes, Doug. You have to get ready.
All right,
all over.
From the capital city, where apparently it's just started to snow. We've got Nick Denning on the phone.
Yeah, see, snow days, as someone who is also, in a form of education, snow days can be okay. Occasionally you just kind of want a day off. And as with no children, I don't have that burden upon me. So, yeah.
Oh, it's not a burden, Nick. It's the joy of my life.
So, yeah, okay. Yeah, David has to lay down the disclaimers for all the parents out there. Oh, yeah, they're fun. Kids are great. Love kids. Rascals. All right, thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Draft. It's like a fantasy basketball, but way better. Sign up at draft.com, use our promo code LOHornets, and you will get a free game with your first deposit. And we are going to do a live draft here in a few moments where we're basically going to draft one Hornet, one Wizard, and then it's a free-for-all, and we're going to see who wins this game. And I think the bet, since they're playing the Washington Wizards, I think we can make it pretty easy for this one. We always put a little something interesting other than money into this draft Wednesday. And I think Wizard hat. So you got to wear a Wizard hat for a show. Is that cool? Got the Mountie hat already. David already owes me a Mountie hat.
This will be our second hat-related wager.
No, listen. Maybe I'm phoning it in a little bit on Draft Wednesday.
How about, can I propose something? Can I, since they're the Wizards, maybe we get a wish, and my wish can be just to not have to do any of these things, since I won, or I just get to erase all the ones that I have to do. So.
You're right. You are Debbie Downer.
What kind of shot is that?
No. That's a no.
I have another proposal for these. Should we make it a month-long thing? So like at the end of the month, perhaps we determine a winner and loser as opposed to every week. These challenges are starting to add up, is what I'm saying.
Well, because you guys won't pay them. That's why they are adding up. They would not be adding your ledger. You're in the red for a reason. You're not paying your debts. You are not Lannisters.
I believe you have a debt to be paid as well.
Yes, I have a sunglass, and I will take care of it on Fun Friday. You guys should take care of some of yours.
Oh, you have to wear sunglasses.
Hey, listen, we all agreed to the bet. The bet is the bet.
I like that one.
Okay, we got a fun show ahead. We're going to talk about practice. The Hornets were back at practice. Steve Clifford was back at practice. We're going to hear from him. Plus, we will preview this game against the Washington Wizards. But let's start with the continuing saga that is the Rockets and Clippers. It wasn't even a melee. It was a not melee, essentially. No violence happened at all. It was just sneaking into locker rooms and not fighting. There's more.
Summer camp.
There's more.
Like a summer camp excursion.
That's right, a summer camp excursion. That's a perfect way to describe it, David. There was more fighting in the Magic Timberwolves game than there was in this locker room. Tizzy that they got into. And I think I said kerfluffle yesterday. I think it's kerfuffle. I think I added an extra L in there, which both the Rockets and the Clippers deserve. for this entire saga. It made Adrian Wojnarowski on Twitter use the word tomfoolery. Anytime you can make Woj say tomfoolery on Twitter.
Guys, what's going on in the NBA right now, though? There's fights. You got players saying they're done with referees, which I got news for them. That's impossible. I mean, this All-Star break.
It's not how it works. They're always going to be referees.
It's an interesting All-Star break, right? With this meeting, this big summit between the players and the refs.
Well, so we're coming down off of the post Malice at the Palace. After that the punishments were so harsh for that you saw everyone sort of rein that aggression back, rein the fake fights back, because there was so much fear about losing a significant amount of games for getting involved in any kind of altercation, and that happened so long ago. Naturally, I think things tend to sway and ebb and flow, and you're seeing guys again push the limits of what you can get away with. And you saw Aaron Aflalo last night take a swing at Bielitsa from the Timberwolves, and that would have called him like 10 games after the Malice at the Palace.
The James Johnson thing got one game.
That's okay, exactly.
Isn't that crazy?
Exactly, because we thought it was going to be multiple games, David.
Yeah, he took 2 swings. He got a game. So I mean, this is weird though, because it's contentious between. It's almost to a personal level between the players and the refs. I don't recall ever seeing this type of constant criticism after the fact. Like, there's always going to be disagreements between players and refs, but like, this is just kind of, it seems like a weird.
Well, you have players charging at refs. You have coaches making contact with refs. That's the thing. And when you don't, when the punishment doesn't happen after those things, when that punishment is not severe, then naturally players go, okay, this is going to be allowed, and they're going to push the limits. This is a highly competitive, highly volatile situation that they put themselves in every night. Emotions are running high. Testosterone is running high. And these things need to, I think it needs to be, I said it when you had the LeBron James situation with the referee. I think these situations have to be addressed immediately or they get out of hand. So,
well, don't you feel like they're basically saying the refs aren't good? I mean, that's what this feels like to me, Nick. Like, the players are out there saying, I'm done with these refs. They don't know what they're doing. Like, we all know that refs have their good nights and bad nights, and some games are bad. But I mean, just watch a college game, guys, if you really want to get frustrated at some of the calls that are going on up there. Like, I mean, I get it, but is there some responsibility for some professionalism on both sides of this?
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, but it's interesting to see. Like, I mean, we have the pleasure of watching a lot of Hornets games, and you see, but you're starting to see more reactions. Like, I feel like Kemba's reacting more often. Other players are maybe following his lead. Lamb got a tech the other night. I mean, Lamb was chasing a ref down the floor.
Yeah, he earned it.
So. And it's not.
And Eric Collins called it before it happened. He was like, "That's a tech."
Right.
That was great.
Like Lamb is the guy who looks like he's having zero fun as he drops 30 points. Like, he just never has any reaction, or occasionally he has a reaction. But so yeah, this is it's interesting. I don't really have much else to say beyond that.
All right, so very good. It's interesting too that it looks like Chris Paul and James Harden are being framed as the people who were trying to hold Trevor Ariza back as they snuck into the Clippers. Yeah. Okay, sure, gotcha. The 2 best players on the team, 2 stars of the NBA, being framed as the peacemakers. Gotcha. Yeah, sure. I totally buy that argument.
One of them knows the back entrances,
right?
Because they used to play there,
exactly.
Right? Yeah, so.
By the way, the Hornets locker room actually has a kind of secret back entrance to an equipment room.
Scoop.
I don't know if
that was on the equipment video we saw a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so it's the way the equipment manager, there's some storage back there, and they move stuff in and out through that door. So maybe that's the same kind of thing that's connected to both locker rooms. Anyway, further investigation needed. Let's talk about practice.
We talking about
practice. We will be perfect. Perfection in every aspect of the game.
What are we talking about? Practice.
Hornets back at practice yesterday with their head coach Steve Clifford returning after being gone for more than a month to address severe headaches. Nick Batum said that practices went right back to the Cliff style, defense first. He kind of laughed about that because that's just the way that Clifford runs the practices. Intense, defense first. Maybe Silas was more offense first. Now Clifford's back, it's back to defense. But big challenges lie ahead for Coach Clifford to find something offensively that will work for this team.
We have to find 2 or 3 things at both ends of the floor that can make the difference so we can make progress. You know, it might be one play for Jeremy Lamb, that an action that we're not using him in that gets him 2 more baskets a game. It might be one more way to get one more fast break basket. Listen, our first year, once we picked up Gary Neal, who was coming off the bench, we went up like 7 offensive rating points in offense. And a lot of it was him. We scored over 3 offensive rebound baskets a game more per game, and it was all Gilchrist and Zeller. And it was just, you know, a couple of the assistants coming in saying, why don't we just let these guys go? You know, it's never easy. You know what I mean? That's where the film work is everything.
David, it sounds like they're still searching for something on this team offensively or even maybe defensively to get them going back in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they've seen a little bit of it over the last couple of weeks, and you hope some of these improvements, maybe now that Clifford comes back in, like you just got to hope that there's a timing issue where he comes back, you know, they can refocus, they can use some of the things that they have had go well. And now that he's back in, maybe he had a little chance to step away and see what's gone right and what's gone wrong, because they've got a chance to still make a little push here. And they've had some success, certainly more success than they had prior to his exit. So they're going to have to keep working there, Doug. I mean, that's what we talked about. Like, you need Nick Batum to put a couple games together. You need these guys to keep performing at that level so they don't have to depend on the free throws every night. But, you know, they're going to need all that stuff and better shooting.
And Nick, he also mentions Gary Neal there, someone brought in via trade. We are approaching the trade deadline. Is this a little subtle sub-tweeting by Steve Clifford?
Yeah, it sounds like he wants Gary Neal back, right? I mean, no, that absolutely. I mean, we're less than a month from that deadline. I have, you know, without any actual sources, I feel positive that they are looking for probably something. This is what the Hornets do at the deadline. So I guess it comes down to whether or not they'll be buyers or sellers. But yeah, I think, you know, if they can get the right piece, you know, that could be a debate for another podcast. You know, then yeah, it could be a situation where they suddenly, you know, their offensive rating jumps 7 points.
Yeah,
So,
I think a lot of people are questioning if the Hornets have all the tools necessary to grill this hamburger, right? I mean, they still have this issue where when Kemba Walker leaves the floor, they fail to produce consistent offense. So that's an issue that still needs to be addressed. I'm not sure that there's anything that they could do on a fundamental level to in terms of bringing in a player to fix that starting lineup, the spacing issues that they have there, unless they again wanted to take on more long-term money. I'm not sure that. What I'm saying is I'm not sure that there's a blockbuster move out there for the Charlotte Hornets, both because of what the Hornets have on their roster to offer and where they see themselves going this season, or their potential to go this season. And you add to that, the trade market itself is a little thin right now. You haven't seen major names being floated around in the rumor mill. The trade deadline is earlier this season. That's affecting a lot of things. So this could be very interesting for the Hornets as we approach February 8th.
And something that's being talked about right now is the calorie sap.
The calorie sap, yes.
Not enough people talk about the calorie sap. They're always talking about the salary cap. But like a lot of teams are in a similar position from the Hornets, right? They're not going to have a ton of room this offseason. So to see a lot of big names and big money getting moved, it's going to be tough to find those slots. So I think that's another piece of it too. Like, it feels like this is one of these small moves. I mean, there's always a big move that kind of starts the domino effect in trade season. but especially for the Hornets, I think their ideal move is going to be something where, if they could write a perfect recipe, it's going to be to get a young guy and to shed some money and to not lose any shooting, right? I mean, that's got to be the goal.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to draft our fantasy team courtesy of draft.com, and there's going to be a listener draft later in the day as well. And we've got more from practice, including another thing that the Hornets have yet to figure out, and that's this partnership, or maybe a lack of partnership, between Nick Batum and Dwight Howard. It was the conversation at practice. We'll have that ahead as well. Stick with us.
This is Locked On Hornets. Our boys got to go Cobra Kai. We got to go 80s villain defense.
Grow a goatee.
Do the gladiators stab them real quick in the ribs before
have an
the
Eastern
game?
European accent.
Only on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, fantasy basketball fans, listen up. If you love fantasy basketball, then you need to try our new favorite app, Draft. It's daily fantasy basketball, but not like the other guys. Here's how it works. It's a draft that lasts for just one night, and there's no management. You just set it, and you forget it. Once you're done drafting, that's it. No trades, no waiver wires. Draft even takes care of last-minute injuries for you. Drafts start every couple of minutes, so you can join one right now. The cool thing about Draft to me is that, I kind of like daily fantasy, but I don't like the idea that other people can draft my players too. In Draft, you get to draft. You get to draft the players, and you get to keep them, and you get to keep all of the glory if you win as well. And the best part is, it's not just glory. You get to play for cold, hard cash as well. Drafts start from just $1, so there's a draft for everyone. Come and join us on Draft today. Download the app anytime. Just search Draft in your app store and join a game in minutes, or play right from your computer on draft.com. For a limited time only, all new players get a free entry into a draft when you make your first deposit, but you have to use our promo code LOHornets. That's right, play a real money game for free just for using our promo code LOHornets on your first deposit on Draft. And so we're drafting our teams right now. And again, our rules for our draft are that we have to take a Hornet and a member of the Washington Wizards. So David went with Kemba Walker. I'm going to go with John Wall in my first round.
Man, it started right before. Good thing I had my cue up.
You did it. Well, that's the thing. You can set your cue.
Started early.
You can set your cues. That's an important part of this whole draft process. All right, so you're going to go Beal.
Let me ask. Do I have to take my Hornet now?
No,
Yes.
You can wait.
What?
You can if you want.
No.
You have to take it now. I'm sorry. Yes. You have to take it now.
Ow.
I'm sorry, Nick. I don't know the rules.
All right.
I made the rules.
See, I
don't know the rules. That's the problem.
Let's see. I'll go to the Dwight House.
I go to the White House.
Right now, I have to. I think it's.
I'm going to get some terrible players now. This is terrible. This is a terrible idea.
Well, that's fine.
You see,
Horrible idea.
no, that isn't fine. See, this is why these things are rigged from the start.
It's rigged. It's fake news. All right, so I went Otto Porter Jr. I've got some things to say about old Otto Porter Jr. in our Wizards preview coming up later in the show, so you want to take a listen to that. But while we finish up this draft, because I'm basically going to auto draft from this point on and just take my chances. But I want to get back to practice. I just previewed it before that little break there. They've yet to figure out this partnership between Nick Batum and Dwight Howard, right? I think that's pretty apparent on the court. You've seen Nick Batum struggle to score. You've seen Nick Batum struggle to be a part of the offense. He complained about it after the Utah Jazz game, saying that basically the ball's not moving enough, and he's having to give up a lot of his usage to Kemba Walker naturally, but also Dwight Howard, who they've added to this roster, and he has to share the court with both Kemba Walker and Dwight Howard at all times, and that's meant less usage for Nick Batum. It was about 22% last year, down to 17% this year. Here's Batum on the state of that relationship between himself and Dwight Howard.
we still got to figure it out. Like sometimes we want the ball, something want to do spin, something like give the ball on the pole. I mean, those details, I mean, we still got to figure it out because it's not easy to play with one guy. We're so dominant sometimes. So, because he saw like the way he played last night, that was easy for me to play with him. Now, depending on the matchup, sometimes the way they guard him, the way they guard me on pick and roll, but we're going to be all right.
Before we discuss this, we should say that in fairness to both of these guys, their two-man game never got a chance to develop, right? Because you had Nick Batum with that preseason injury. They never got into that sort of game shape in terms of their two-man game. And when you watch them try to work off of each other so far this season, they don't always seem to be in sync about what should happen after that initial action. If the play goes to Nick Batum and he works it to Dwight Howard, there's not always a kick out. There's not always a plan because it just doesn't seem like they're on the same page at all times. So that was the evaluation by Nick Batum of that game against Detroit. So he seemed to think it went a little better. Is that how you view it, Nick? Did it seem like they had a little bit of a better groove against Detroit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dwight was still getting touches, but I felt like the ball wasn't sticking as much with him. I saw a little bit more just kind of going through this screen and roll. Batum was still getting plenty of shots himself, or at the very least, just feeling he's getting involved. I think a lot of times for players, it's just about touching the ball. And I mean, and you can think about games in the past or just look back at certain plays where, the ball just goes to Dwight and it just sticks there. And then it's just kind of like for the other players, especially for Batum, he's going to go to the hoop. So I'm just going to just stand here and let him do his thing. So yeah, it's good to see that since those initial comments, I think after the Jazz game, they're trying to make adjustments there. That, again, that just shows they're trying to work through this process.
David, what are your thoughts on the Dwight Howard Nick Batum relationship?
Well, and also it felt like the Pistons were I don't know if they were helping that effort, but anytime these teams are doubling Dwight quick, it feels like he's making more of an effort, doing a better job of getting that ball out quickly to other people. But I just think that they're still, as a whole, I mean, the whole team is still trying to kind of piece this thing together, first of all with Dwight and then introducing Nick back into the fold. And his inconsistencies, honestly, it's not helping because you're not able to count on the same thing from him every night. But I feel like it is slowly but surely starting to get there, whether that's, Dwight being, handling, not getting it better, or Nick knowing that he needs to get in there and get those touches for him, or just Nick himself being more involved, because I think that's the main thing that they want to see, right? They want to see nights like he had against Detroit where 14 points and he's spreading his, spreading himself across the stat sheet. That's what he's got to do. So if that's the result, and Dwight had a huge game too. So the thing they've got to figure out is when Dwight is not dominating, when he's not having one of those games like he did against Detroit where he's crashing the boards and got 21 points and he's efficient and he gets free throws, what do they do then, right?
There's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, because everyone wants to see Nick Batum more involved in the game. The coaching staff wants to see that. Nick Batum wants to be more involved in the offense, and fans want him to be more involved in the offense, but fans want him to score more, whereas Nick Batum, as Nick alluded to, just wants to touch the ball, just wants to have an opportunity to make a play. And when that's not happening, when they're exclusively running things for Kemba Walker to get into the pick and roll, and then Dwight Howard sort of isolation post-ups, that's, I think, when Nick Batum starts to shut down, when he doesn't feel like he's a part of the process. But if you look back at that Detroit Pistons game, it still was a lot of Kemba opening up things for Dwight. And the reason it worked against Detroit is because Detroit was throwing out Avery Bradley and Ish Smith on Kemba Walker. Those are two guards who don't have a lot of size. They can't pressure Kemba. Kemba could get the ball to Dwight easily. What's been happening and why that play hasn't worked in games past, why they can't develop half-court offense consistently, is because teams have smartly put size on Kemba Walker in that pick-and-roll situation, and it's disrupted things. That's one of the reasons why they wanted to get the Batum-Howard relationship going in the pick and roll, because Batum could throw it over the top. But you just, for whatever reason, have not seen that. Even in that game against the Pistons, they were not running that action a lot. But you've seen the usage for Dwight Howard go down. You've seen Dwight Howard be more willing to kick the ball out to Nick Batum. That's happening as well. It's just, they just don't seem in sync yet. We just haven't seen it be easy for those two yet. But here, this is interesting too, what Nick said at practice about that Detroit game.
I feel like everybody plays a role yesterday. Dwight was a monster inside. He didn't try to force anything. Came back, had a pretty tough first half. He closed the deal like he used to. And Mike, he did a good job on defense. I tried to be the playmaker once again. And everybody was stepping on the court. Did his job, and that was a good team win.
Dwight didn't try to force things. I think that's where a lot of this frustration from Nick Batum is coming from. He sees the ball go down to Dwight in the post, but the ball ends up coming back out because Dwight likes to, even when he has good post position sometimes, Dwight will catch and then step out of the paint to try to face up his guy and take him off the dribble. And too often that has ended up being a turnover or a missed hook shot, or some kind of missed post move. It's just not a very effective play for the Hornets offense. And you heard Nick Batum say it after that Jazz game, if that's the way you want to go, if that's the plan, if you want to get Dwight more looks like that, and we're winning, that's one thing. But when the team's not winning consistently, then something's obviously wrong. There's still the bottom line is this offense is still trying to search for ways to involve Dwight Howard in the offense and also have a positive offense.
And I think the guys have got to move. Those times that you mentioned, Doug, when he's stepping out and starting to face up, cutters have got to keep moving, right? They've got to give him some options and lanes to throw to. Maybe they are, and maybe it's just not happening enough. But they've got to stay involved and ready for a pass like MKG on a cut, or Batum and Marvin. Any of those guys that can make lanes to the basket and not let Dwight, shoot that bank. I'm willing to give him one bank attempt a game. I think it's funny. It's interesting. I can't wait for him to go in. But you're right. The further out he is, the worse it is for the offense. So they've got to keep moving and try and get that ball out of his hands when it's not happening. I just, like you said, it's. I don't think this was going to be solved in the first month of the season or even the first half of the season. This feels like a full season to get used to this. It's just such a different.
But I'm not, and I don't know about you, Nick or David, but I'm not confident that it's ever going to work. That's the thing. It's taken a while, but I'm not sure. And I'm willing to continue watching. We're seeing positive signs, so I'm willing to keep watching and see if they start to develop. There's not a go-to. There's not better shooting,
right?
Well, it's got to start with better shooting and more shooting. I think maybe getting some plays for Marvin Williams to continue his good shooting, but it's got to be good shooting from everyone. But I haven't seen a play that Nick and Dwight have run together over the course of 5 or 6 games that I go, yeah, that's their play. That's their get in the groove play. I just haven't seen that develop between those two. I'm waiting on it. But it's got to be better screening from Dwight Howard, better shot making from Nick Batum, and quicker decisions from everyone, I think. That's been part of the problem, too, is the ball just gets stuck and it doesn't move quick enough.
Right. Well, let me ask you all this. We've always talked about the Batum-Zeller partnership and how well it's worked in the past. And what's kind of the reason for that? Because Cody always cuts off ball. He's always looking to fill in space, and Batum's he recognizes that. He finds them. So he's always found him for easy shots.
I'm glad you brought this up, Nick. I'm glad you brought this up because at practice yesterday, but also over the course of the past few weeks, Nick Batum has talked a lot about Cody Zeller. He talks about Cody like I talk about season 2 of Westworld. Like it's almost back. I want it back so bad. It's almost here. Come on, HBO. Just give it to me like a couple of months early. And they developed such a great relationship in the pick and roll in previous years, and I think he misses that. But I also think he misses the unselfishness and, frankly, the limited offensive usage of Cody Zeller and the ball movement that would come with that and the quick decisions that come with getting the ball to Cody Zeller. Now Cody Zeller presented negatives that Dwight Howard counters as positives. But the things that Dwight Howard brings as positives, defense, physicality, putback plays, those don't affect Nick Batum. Nick Batum doesn't have anything to do with those, so he's not seeing those, but you're hearing him talk a lot about Cody Zeller, and I think that means something.
Well, obviously he's familiar with, but like Cody, there weren't a lot of audibles. Like it was either going to be one or two things, or it was on to the next thing for Nick. Like, so he didn't have to think about what Cody's going to do and then what he's got to do. It's like they're still in that thinking mode.
Yes,
it's not purely reactionary yet.
Yeah, and the question I think that still hasn't been answered is who has to make that adjustment. Is it Batum? Is it Howard? Or is it both of them? And the other question is, how long will it take to get on the same page? And is there something this coaching staff can do in game and in practice to get them some go-to plays that will work for both of these guys and get them more involved with each other?
It's going to take, like, honestly, I mean, they're going to have to, like, they're going to have to stick it out because both are here, or at least Dwight's here for another year. Nick's here for what feels like eternity. So they're going to, like, you know, it could honestly come down to they figure it out this summer and maybe they try to do something. I mean, you know, it's or they don't. I don't know. But one note, just to kind of, I was looking at this. We talk about Nick being more aggressive. Last 3 games, he's averaged double figures in shot attempts. He's actually back to where his shot attempts average previous 2 seasons was about 12.5 shots per game, and he's shooting around about that these past 3 games. Yep. He's not making many of them, mind you, but at least that's a sign that since the Dallas game, which was the one he had issue with, it feels like, he's starting to get more involved. He's starting to take more shots. They just have to start falling now.
And it's different for different players. And for Nick, I mean, you can see it. You spoke to it. Like when he shoots, that seems to get him involved in the rest of the game. Like for some guys, it's on defense. For some guys, it's easy shots at the basket. For some guys, it's free throws. Like for Dwight, I think it's, you know, literally just touches. And for Nick too, like when he gets some of those shots, it just helps him stay involved in the game. And it's weird because he's not like a guy that hunts shots. Like he wants shots, but you can just see it. He just disappears if he doesn't stay involved. And so I think those shots are a factor. You want to see him have about 12 shots a game. And
how much of this? Look, you brought Dwight Howard in, who obviously is going to want and need touches. But how much of this too is MKG being more aggressive on offense? They certainly look for MKG's offense more than they have since he's been here. I mean, they look for him to drive, cut, and make baskets inside or pull up and hit that mid-range shot. Like that's something that is built in to the offense for better and worse, and I think that's affecting things as well. So bottom line, the Hornets have some things to figure out offensively. They have been playing better offensively. They're about 15th in the league over the past 10 games, but Coach Clifford says they need to get to 12. They need to get maybe even to 10 to put this thing in gear for a possible playoff run. And it starts tonight against the Washington Wizards. Tip-off at 7 o'clock p.m. right here in Charlotte. The Wizards are 25-19, 5th place in the East. This is where the Hornets were projected to be, by the way. 5th place in the East. This is where they wanted to be. And now they've won 6 wins in 10 games. They have an opportunity in this game to begin to prove that they deserve to be in the playoff discussion with a second straight win against a top 8 team in the East. They got the win against Detroit. That was step 1. I think beating Washington, and maybe if they can beat Miami, Miami's 4th in the East, then all of a sudden things get interesting. But those are both big ifs. The Wizards are also winners of 6 of their last 10 and are 500 on the road. The last time the Hornets and Wizards hooked up, it was one of the most exciting games of the season. November 22nd, it was Kemba Walker's most clutch performance of the season. He hit a layup and 2 free throws to send the game into overtime, where they would finally get a win after regulation. I think, David, we thought that could have been a turning point for the Hornets at that point, but they just couldn't. They couldn't build off of it. What's the opportunity? What's the situation for the Hornets as they prepare to take on the Washington Wizards?
Guys, I mean, it continues to be all about the Hornets. almost regardless of matchup here. I mean, but I think in this one, obviously, you're watching for Beal and Wall. Doug, you mentioned the frustrations that longer, taller guards and backcourts can give Kemba Walker. That's going to be big in this one. But I'm looking at the rebounding. You know, Charlotte does well when Dwight Howard is getting his rebounds and they're dominating the boards. And the other area still is going to be, they've got to be able to convert at the free throw line and get there, especially if they're not shooting well. Hopefully the strong shooting will continue. But for them to keep up with Washington, you know, they don't create a lot of easy buckets, the Hornets, that is. So I think the further they can get to the free throw line, continue that advantage there, and then win the battle on the boards, because I think Dwight will have a chance to get a little bit of an advantage inside against some of those smaller Washington like wing guards and post players.
Frank Kaminsky listed as questionable for this game. He rolled his right ankle in the last game against Detroit. That was the same ankle that he sprained against Golden State several weeks ago, or more than a month ago. That was the same game that Cody Zeller had to have the knee injury that resulted in surgery for him as well. So Frank, questionable, but he did everything that the rest of the team did in practice. So a possibility that he plays. If he does not play, then you can expect more Johnny O'Brien, possibly more minutes for Dwight with the bench, and more minutes maybe for Marvin Williams as well, maybe some Travion Graham at the 4. They've done that before as well. Nick, what do you see in this game against the Wizards and Hornets as possible keys?
Just kind of building off what we've been talking about today. Just does the Dwight Batum relationship continue to show progress, or at least signs? Like, you know, it's really, I think, going to be a big key in whether this offense starts to work more, or, you know, operate more like we want it to. So, you know, as David said, I want this to be, I'm more concerned about the Hornets, and specifically that relationship, because I think the other things will be okay. You know, I think we can generally expect to see a solid Kemba Walker game. The bench has been playing better in most games of late, not all of them, but, you know, we're starting to see a little bit more consistency. So yeah, that's my key.
All right, I'll talk about the Wizards. The Wizards have some of the same problems they've had over the years because they don't address them in the offseason. They have inconsistency issues. They take games off offensively. They take games off defensively. So when they're locked in, both offensively and defensively, like if you look at it over the course of the year, they're top 10 in both. They should be a team that is untouchable, and yet they've lost 19 games because there are literally games when they play no defense and literally games when they play no offense. So they have consistency issues. They have bench scoring issues. They have late game offense issues, and their three-point shooting is a light switch. It turns on and off. Interestingly, the Hornets and Wizards have a common problem. They both have a wing player that has regressed, disappears in games, and is generally viewed as not aggressive enough. We've talked a lot about that in terms of Nick Batum, but for the Wizards, it's Otto Porter. Porter had an amazing breakout year last season, was one of the best three-point shooters in the league and one of the most dependable wing scorers in the league. But this year, he's regressed in nearly every aspect of his game, and you've heard John Wall speak publicly about the need to get him involved earlier and more often, and also the need for Porter to shoot better. I'm kind of wondering why there hasn't been that talk in the Hornets locker room, like some people speaking out, but that's, you know, generally not the kind of locker room.
Wizards thing.
That's kind of a Wizards thing. It's not a Hornets thing. But they are also, the Wizards are still great at some of the things that they've been great at over these past few years in the Wall-Beal era. Of course, they're great at converting at the rim. They're great at creating steals and fast break points. In fact, they get out into transition as much as they run pick-and-roll ball handler plays. That's amazing. I mean, pick-and-roll ball handler has become such a dominant place in so many offenses, yet this Wizards team finds a way to get out into transition just as much, and they are extremely effective. Fourth place, according to Synergy, in the league in points per possession on transition plays. So the Hornets will be tested. Their transition defense, which is generally a focus for them, will be highly tested in this game. And because of the way that the Wizards push the ball, they can score in bunches. I don't know if you guys remember this, but in the last matchup, the Hornets faced a 10 or so point deficit several times in that game. They got it. They got into overtime and ended up winning the game, but they were down 10 in the third. They were down 10 in the fourth, and the Hornets never gave up. And that's what it's going to take to win tonight's game as well. I think you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see them, Beal get into transition, knock down threes, Wall get to the rim in transition, and they can run you up 12 points. They're just not always going to defend you well. If they don't get the steal, they might give up the basket. And so the Hornets just have to stick with things. I think that you got to attack the Gortat-Howard matchup, get him involved early, get Batum involved early, and Kemba Walker late, and the Hornets could have a chance to win this game. Wizards are 24th in free throw rate allowed, according to Cleaning the Glass as well. So if the Hornets can get to the line, they might have a chance too.
Which they do. Interesting to see what the crowd looks like tonight, Doug. The snow is coming down.
I might, I traveled to the studio for this show. I might have to go back home if it's going to.
You got to get out of there, bro.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Hornets here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, whatever you use to get your podcast. Just search Locked On Hornets. Join us for the listener draft later today on draft.com. Sign up. Use our promo code LOHornets. Follow me on there, LOH Doug, and you will get notifications when we send out our listener drafts. We're back again tomorrow with a recap of this game against the Washington Wizards. For David and Nick, I'm Doug. Go Hornets. Go America. Let's swarm Charlotte.